Next time, get my order right. I felt the heat before I heard the words. Scalding coffee, still steaming, splashed across my chest, soaking through my white uniform like acid. The ceramic cup shattered at my feet. My skin screamed. I couldn't breathe. Paul didn't flinch. He was already turning toward the exit, straightening his $3,000 suit jacket like he'd just paid a compliment instead of committing assault. "Paul, please." He laughed. That cold, entitled laugh that said he'd done this before and gotten away with it. Around us, 50 people in designer clothes kept eating, kept drinking. A woman in pearls glanced over, then back at her lobster bisque. A man in a tuxedo checked his Rolex. In the service industry, this is called the invisible violence, when customers abuse workers in plain sight and bystanders choose silence over action. It happens every single day. But someone wasn't silent. Across the dining room, near the bar where the dim light barely reached, there was a man I'd never seen move. Gu Sung-min, my boss, the owner. Korean, maybe 40, dressed in all black, a fitted shirt that showed every line of muscle beneath it. He wasn't eating, wasn't drinking. He was just watching. His eyes weren't on me. They were locked on Paul. Then he moved. Not fast, not loud. Just 3 calm steps toward the main entrance. Paul reached for the brass handle, still smirking, still untouchable. And Sung-min's hand slammed against the glass door, holding it shut. Click. The deadbolt. Sung-min flipped it with one finger. The sound echoed through the marble floors like a gunshot. The music didn't stop, but every conversation did. Paul froze. Sung-min's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. Nobody leaves. Let me take you back 6 hours. My name is Vanita Baloo, and I'm a waitress at the Obsidian Lounge, the kind of restaurant where a single meal costs more than my rent. I work double shifts, 7 days a week, just to keep my student loans from swallowing me whole. I smile when guests snap their fingers. I apologize for mistakes I didn't make, because if I lose this job, I lose everything. Today was supposed to be easy. Dinner rush, table 12, 1 espresso, black, no sugar. I checked the order 3 times. I brought it exactly how he asked. But Paul Donovan, tech CEO, net worth somewhere north of $200 million, decided I got it wrong. Maybe the foam was off, maybe the cup was too hot, or maybe he just wanted to remind me that I was nothing. Here's what most people don't know. Burn injuries from hot liquids can cause second-degree burns in under 3 seconds, and in workplace assault cases, victims have the legal right to file both criminal charges and civil lawsuits, not just workers' compensation claims. But people like Paul? They know most service workers won't risk their jobs to fight back, so he threw it, not at the floor, at me. The coffee hit my chest, my neck, my collarbone. The pain was instant, like fire crawling under my skin. I heard my own voice crack, begging him to stop, but I didn't even realize I'd said it out loud. He walked away laughing, and that's when Sung-min stood up. I'd worked at the Obsidian for 8 months, and I'd never seen my boss speak to a customer. He stayed in the shadows, watching from the back office or the corner booth. The staff whispered about him. He's ex-military. He's connected. Don't ask questions. I just knew he paid on time and didn't yell, which made him better than most. But when he walked toward that door, something shifted. His shoulders rolled back. His jaw tightened. And when he locked us all inside, Paul, the 50 witnesses, me, and him, I realized we didn't work for a restaurant owner. We worked for someone who used to be very, very dangerous. Paul spun around, his face red. "Do you know who I am? Open that door." Sung-min didn't blink. He slid his hand into his pocket and pulled out his phone, not to call anyone but to set it on the bar. Then he spoke, his voice so calm it made my blood run cold. "You burned her. Now you pay the debt." Paul laughed again, but this time it was shaky. "I'll call the police. I'll call my lawyer. I'll have this place shut down by morning." Sung-min took 1 step forward, just one, and Paul's laugh died in his throat. Because the people in this room, the silent ones, the ones who watched me burn and did nothing, they all knew something Paul didn't. See, the Korean Mafia, known as the Kung Pai, operated for decades under a strict hierarchical code called the debt system. If you disrespect someone under a boss's protection, you don't just apologize. You pay in a way that ensures you never forget. And Sungmin? The tattoos hidden under that black shirt, the ones I'd glimpsed once when he rolled up his sleeves in the kitchen, they told a story Paul was about to learn firsthand. Sungmin looked at me. His eyes softened just for a second. Then they went dead again as he turned back to Paul. Sit down. Or I'll make you sit down. Paul tried to push past him. Sungmin didn't move. Paul shoved harder, and that's when Sungmin's hand shot out, one open palm strike to Paul's chest, and the $200 million CEO crumpled like paper. The room gasped. I gasped. Paul was on his knees, wheezing, his face purple, and Sungmin leaned down, his voice a whisper that somehow reached every corner of the room. In my country, we have a saying. The ones who serve you deserve your honor, not your cruelty. You just dishonored my house. Now you'll clean it. That's when I knew. This wasn't about the coffee. This was about power, about silence, about 50 people who watched a woman burn and did nothing, until one man decided nothing else mattered more than her dignity. If you've ever been that person, the one who stayed quiet when someone was being hurt, or the one who was hurt and nobody stood up, hit that like button right now. Subscribe because this story gets darker before it gets to the light. And drop your location and the time you're watching in the comments. Let me know you're here. Let me know you see her. Because Vanita deserves that. And maybe so do you. The pain was worse than I thought possible. My skin felt like it was still boiling, layers of heat burrowing deeper with every second. I looked down at the brown stains spreading across my white uniform, the fabric clinging to my chest where the coffee had burned through. My hands shook. My throat closed. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out except a choked gasp. Paul was still laughing. That same careless, dismissive laugh like he'd just told a joke at a cocktail party instead of assaulting someone. He brushed an invisible speck off his sleeve and turned toward the door, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. He didn't look back. He didn't apologize. He just walked. And then he stopped, because Sungmin was standing in front of him. I don't know how he got there so fast. One moment he was across the room, and the next he was blocking the exit, his body filling the doorframe like a wall. Paul nearly walked into his chest before he realized what was happening. He stepped back, his smile faltering for just a second before the arrogance returned. "Excuse me," Paul said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Move." Sungmin didn't move, didn't blink. His arms hung loose at his sides, but there was something coiled about him, like a spring wound too tight, waiting to snap. His eyes, dark and unreadable, they locked onto Paul's face. The air between them went cold. Paul laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. "Are you serious right now? Get out of my way." Sungmin's hand moved to the door behind him. His fingers found the deadbolt, and with one smooth, deliberate motion, he flipped it. Click. The sound cut through the low murmur of conversation like a blade. Heads turned. Glasses paused midway to lips. The string quartet in the corner kept playing, but it felt wrong now, like background music to something about to go very, very bad. Paul's smile vanished. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Sungmin reached into his pocket. For a moment, I thought he was pulling out a weapon. My heart stopped, but instead he pulled out the key, the master key to the front doors, and held it up so everyone could see. Then he opened his mouth, placed the key on his tongue, and swallowed. I heard someone gasp. A woman dropped her fork. Paul's face went white. "You just—" Paul stammered, his voice rising. "You just swallowed the key?" Sungmin wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his expression completely blank. Then he turned to face the room. 50 people stared back at him. Celebrities, CEOs, old money in tailored suits and diamond necklaces. They looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Sit down," Sungmin said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It filled every corner of the room, every silent space between the tables. "All of you, sit down." Nobody moved at first. Then a man in a gray suit slowly sank back into his chair. A woman in a red dress followed. One by one they sat. Some looked scared, some looked confused, but they all obeyed. Paul spun around, his face red now, his hands balled into fists. "You can't do this. Do you have any idea who I am? I'll have you arrested. I'll have this place burned to the ground. You'll shut up," Sungmin interrupted. His tone didn't change. It was still calm, still quiet, but there was something underneath it now, something sharp and deadly. "You'll sit down, and you'll listen." Paul laughed, but it was shrill now, panicked. "I'm not sitting down. I'm leaving. And when I do, I'm calling the police, my lawyer, and every single person I know who can make your life a living hell." Sungmin took one step forward. Just one. And Paul stumbled backward, his confidence crumbling. He bumped into a chair and nearly tripped. When he looked up, Sungmin was still coming. "You burned her," Sungmin said. Each word was measured, deliberate. "You threw scalding liquid on a woman who did nothing to you, and then you laughed." "She got my order wrong," Paul shot back, but his voice cracked. "I'm a paying customer. I have rights." "You have nothing," Sungmin said, and then he stopped, standing so close to Paul that their faces were inches apart. "In Korea, we have a concept called kemyeon. It means face, your reputation, your honor. You lose your kemyeon, you lose everything." His eyes narrowed. "You just lost yours." Paul's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around the room, searching for support, for someone to step in. But every single person was staring at their plates, their drinks, their hands, anywhere but at him. "Sit down," Sungmin said again. "On your knees." "I'm not," Paul started, but Sungmin cut him off. "On your knees." Paul's face twisted with rage. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "I'm Paul Donovan. I own half the tech companies in this city. I have security. I have people. They'll be here in 5 minutes, and when they get here, you're done. You're finished." He fumbled in his pocket, pulling out his phone. His hands shook as he unlocked it, his thumb jabbing at the screen. "I'm calling them right now. You're going to jail, Sungmin moved. It happened so fast I almost missed it. One moment Paul was holding his phone, and the next it was gone, snatched out of his hand like a toy from a child. Paul blinked, confused, his empty hand still raised in the air. Sungmin held the phone up, examining it for a moment. Then he walked to the nearest table, where a silver pitcher of ice water sat sweating in the candlelight. He picked up the pitcher, and without a word, he dropped the phone inside. The screen flickered once, then went black. "No calls," Sungmin said, setting the pitcher back down. "Just us." Paul's face went from red to purple. His chest heaved, his fists clenched and unclenched at his sides. "You're insane," he hissed. "You're absolutely insane." Sungmin didn't respond. He just stood there, waiting. And then Paul snapped. He lunged forward, both hands reaching for Sungmin's shirt. "I'm leaving!" he shouted. "Get out of my way!" He shoved hard, putting all his weight behind it. Sungmin didn't budge. He stood there like a statue, like Paul had pushed against a concrete wall. Paul shoved again, harder this time, his face twisted with fury. Nothing. Sungmin didn't even sway. And then his eyes changed. I saw it happen. 1 second they were cold and empty, and the next they were something else. Something darker, something that made my stomach drop. His jaw tightened, his shoulders rolled back, and when he spoke, his voice was so quiet it was almost a whisper. "You shouldn't have done that." Paul opened his mouth to respond, and Sungmin struck. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't even a slap. It was an open palm strike to the center of Paul's chest. One clean, precise hit, delivered with the kind of control that only comes from years of practice. The kind of control that says I know exactly how much force I'm using, and I could use more if I wanted to. The sound was like a drumbeat, a single hollow thump that echoed through the room. Paul's eyes went wide. His mouth opened in a silent gasp, and then he collapsed. Not slowly, not dramatically. He just crumpled, his knees buckling, his body folding in on itself as all the air left his lungs in one violent rush. He hit the floor hard, clutching his chest, wheezing like a broken accordion. His face turned purple, then white. He tried to suck in air, but nothing came. The room erupted. People screamed, chairs scraped, someone yelled for a doctor. But Sungmin didn't move. He just stood over Paul, his hand still raised, his expression completely unchanged. And then, slowly, Paul's lungs unlocked. Air flooded back in with a horrible rasping sound. He coughed, gagged, and rolled onto his side, gasping like a fish on land. Tears streamed down his face. His perfectly styled hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat. Sungmin crouched down beside him, his knees creaking softly. He leaned in close, his voice so quiet that only Paul and maybe I could hear. "That technique is called Jiangquan," he said. "A strike to the solar plexus. It temporarily paralyzes the diaphragm. You can't breathe, you think you're dying, but you're not. Not yet." He tilted his head, studying Paul like a specimen under glass. "I learned it when I was 16, in Busan, from a man who killed 7 people with it before the police finally caught him. He taught me before they hanged him. He said, 'Power is useless if you don't know when to stop.'" Sungmin's eyes darkened. "I know when to stop, do you?" Paul didn't answer. He couldn't. He was still gasping, still crying, still clutching his chest like his heart was going to explode. Sungmin stood up. He looked around the room, at all the frozen faces staring back at him. "This is what happens when you hurt someone in my house," he said. His voice was calm again, but it carried a weight now, a promise. "You don't walk away. You don't laugh. You pay." He looked down at Paul, who was finally starting to breathe normally again. "Get on your knees." Paul shook his head, his voice a ragged whisper. "No." Sungmin sighed. "Then we do this the hard way." And that's when I saw it. As Sungmin reached down to grab Paul's collar, his sleeve rode up his forearm, just a few inches. But it was enough, because underneath the black fabric, crawling up his skin like living shadows, were tattoos. And intricate, dense, unmistakable, dragons, serpents, symbols I didn't recognize but somehow understood, the markings of the Kangpai, the Korean Mafia. Someone in the crowd gasped. A man in a tuxedo stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Oh my God," he whispered. He's... But Sungmin ignored him. He pulled Paul to his knees with one hand, effortless, like lifting a child. Paul didn't resist this time. He just knelt there, shaking, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained with sweat. Sungmin looked at me, and for the first time since this started, his expression softened. "Are you all right?" he asked. I realized I was crying. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure it was true. He turned back to Paul. "Apologize." Paul's lips trembled. I'm sorry." "Not to me," Sungmin said. "To her." Paul looked at me. His face was a mess. Tears, snot, smudged makeup from where he'd been crying. He looked small now, pathetic. Nothing like the man who'd laughed at me 10 minutes ago. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I wanted to feel satisfied. I wanted to feel vindicated, but all I felt was tired and scared. Because I realized something in that moment, something that made my stomach turn. Sungmin hadn't just defended me, he'd enjoyed it, and I had no idea what he was going to do next. Paul's whispered apology hung in the air like smoke. The room was so quiet I could hear the chandelier crystals tinkling above us, swaying from some invisible draft. 50 people held their breath, waiting, watching. Sungmin stared down at Paul, his face unreadable. Then he reached for Paul's arm, yanking him to his feet with a force that made Paul stumble. As Sungmin's grip tightened, his sleeve rode up further, past his wrist, past his forearm, all the way to his elbow. The tattoos weren't just on his arm. They were everywhere. Black ink crawled across his skin like living things. Dragons with scales so detailed they seemed to shimmer in the candlelight. Serpents coiling around cherry blossoms. Korean characters I couldn't read but somehow felt the weight of. The designs covered every inch of visible skin, disappearing under his collar and reappearing at his neck. These weren't the kind of tattoos you got at a shop downtown. These were Irizumi-style markings, the kind that took years to complete, the kind that told a story, the kind that marked you as Kangpai. The woman in the red dress stood abruptly, her napkin falling to the floor. "Oh, God," she whispered. He's one of them." The man in the gray suit grabbed his wife's hand. "We need to leave, now." But nobody moved toward the door, because they knew, we all knew, that the deadbolt was still locked and the key was somewhere in Sungmin's stomach. Paul saw the tattoos too. His eyes went wide, his face draining of what little color had returned. You're Kangpei," he stammered. "You're Korean mob." Sungmin's expression didn't change. "Was," he said quietly. "Past tense matters." But the way he said it, like a man trying to convince himself, made me wonder if he truly believed it. Paul started talking faster now, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. Listen, this wasn't personal, okay? I was paid. I was hired to do this. It was just a job." Sungmin's grip on Paul's arm tightened. Explain." "There's a developer," Paul gasped, wincing from the pressure on his arm. David Chen. He wants this building. He's been trying to buy you out for months, but you won't sell, so he hired me to cause a scene, make the place look bad, get it in the news, tank your reputation so you'd have to sell." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "You threw coffee on me for a real estate deal?" My voice came out strangled, raw. Paul wouldn't look at me. "It wasn't supposed to be that hot. I was supposed to make a scene, that's all. I didn't mean to actually hurt you." "But you did," Sungmin said. His voice was so cold it made the room temperature drop. "And now you'll pay for it." He started dragging Paul toward the back of the restaurant, toward the kitchen doors. Paul's shoes scraped against the marble, still leaving black marks. He tried to plant his feet, tried to pull away, but Sungmin's grip was iron. "Wait!" Paul shouted. "Wait, please! I'm sorry, I'll pay her, name your price." Sungmin didn't respond. He just kept walking. I don't know why I followed. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe some part of me knew that if I didn't, something terrible was going to happen. I stumbled after them, my burned skin screaming with every movement, pushing through the kitchen doors just as Sungmin shoved Paul through another doorway. The freezer. The temperature hit me like a wall, a blast of cold air that made my burned skin throb even worse. The space was smaller than I expected, lined with metal shelves stacked with produce, cuts of meat wrapped in plastic, and industrial-sized containers of ingredients. A single bulb dangled from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows across Sungmin's face. He slammed Paul against the back wall. Paul's head hit the metal with a hollow clang. "Please," Paul whimpered. "Please don't kill me." "Kill you?" Sungmin tilted his head. "You think I'm going to kill you? Aren't you?" Paul's voice was barely a whisper. Sungmin was quiet for a long moment, then he reached up and started unbuttoning his shirt. Slowly, deliberately, one button at a time. "In the Kangpei," he said, his voice echoing off the freezer walls. "There are levels of punishment. The lowest level is yubichigi, public humiliation. You've already experienced that." He undid another button, revealing more ink. A massive dragon that started at his collarbone and disappeared down his chest. The next level is sonkarak jarugi, cutting off a finger. In Japan, the Yakuza call it yubitsume. It's a way of atoning for failure, of showing your boss you understand the depth of your mistake. Paul's eyes went to Sungmin's hands. All 10 fingers were intact. "The third level," Sungmin continued, "is piga, blood debt, when humiliation isn't enough and a finger won't suffice. When the offense is so great that only pain, real, lasting pain, can balance the scales." He finished unbuttoning his shirt and let it fall open, revealing his full torso. The tattoos covered everything, a massive piece that told a story in images, dragons fighting tigers, a temple burning, a woman's face, beautiful and sad over his heart. "I've given Piga 3 times in my life. Twice the men lived. Once he didn't." "Please," Paul sobbed. "I have money. I have connections. I can make this right." Money? Sungmin's laugh was bitter. You think this is about money? He grabbed Paul's face, forcing him to look toward the freezer door where I stood frozen in the doorway. Look at her. Look at what you did. Paul's eyes met mine, and I saw it. Real fear, real regret, not for getting caught, but for hurting me. Sungmin released Paul's face and reached for something on the shelf, a meat cleaver hanging from a hook. The blade gleamed under the single bulb. In Korean culture, there's a concept called jung. It's deeper than love, more binding than friendship. It's a connection that grows slowly over time, built through shared experiences, through watching someone when they don't know you're watching, through protecting them without asking for anything in return. He turned the cleaver over in his hand. I have jong for her, and you hurt her. Sungmin, stop. My voice cut through the cold air. He looked at me, and for a moment his expression softened. Just a fraction. He deserves this, Sungmin said. Maybe, I said, but you don't deserve what it'll do to you. You don't understand, he said quietly. I spent 20 years trying to leave that life behind. I came here. I bought this restaurant. I followed every rule, paid every tax, never made a single threat. I rebuilt myself from nothing. And then this man, this coward who was paid to humiliate you, he walks into my house and throws acid in the face of the only person who's made me feel human in 5 years. It wasn't acid, I said. It was coffee. It was violence. His knuckles were white around the cleaver handle, and violence has a price. I took a step into the freezer, then another. The cold bit into my burned skin, making my eyes water. You're right, I said. Violence has a price, and if you do this, if you hurt him the way you want to, you'll be the one paying it, not him, you. Sungmin stared at me. The cleaver trembled in his hand. You said you left that life behind, I continued, my voice shaking. Prove it. Not to me, not to him, to yourself. For a long moment, nothing happened. The freezer hummed. Paul's ragged breathing echoed off the walls, and Sungmin stood there, weapon in hand, war raging behind his eyes. Then he lowered the cleaver, slowly, and set it back on the shelf. Get out, he said to Paul. His voice was hollow. Do you get on your knees and clean up what you spilled, every drop, and if I ever see your face again, I won't stop myself next time. Paul scrambled past us, sobbing with relief, and disappeared through the kitchen doors. I heard him collapse on the other side, still crying. Sungmin stood there, his shirt hanging open, his tattoos exposed, looking more vulnerable than any man that dangerous had a right to look. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For stopping me. For seeing who I'm trying to be instead of who I was. By the time we returned to the dining room, Paul was on his knees in the center of the floor, using his silk Hermes tie to mop up the coffee stain. His hands shook. His face was blotchy and red. The 50 witnesses watched in silence as this man, this powerful, wealthy, untouchable man, scrubbed the floor like a servant. Someone had called the police. I heard the sirens before I saw the red and blue lights flashing through the front windows. 2 officers entered through the kitchen entrance, hands on their holsters. The older one, a detective with gray hair and tired eyes, looked at Sungmin and sighed. Min, the detective said, tell me you didn't kill anyone. Not today, Miller, Sungmin replied. Detective Miller looked around the room, at the locked front door, at Paul on his knees, at the 50 terrified witnesses. What happened here? A customer assaulted my employee, Sungmin said, gesturing to me. I asked him to leave. He refused, so I detained him until you arrived. Miller's eyes narrowed. And the door? Locked for everyone's safety. Uh-huh, and where's the key? Sungmin patted his stomach. Somewhere safe. Miller looked like he wanted to argue. Then he looked at me, at my burned uniform, my red skin, my tear-streaked face. He looked at Paul, still scrubbing, and he shook his head. You got security footage? Camera malfunctioned, Sungmin said smoothly. Happens sometimes. Old building. Miller stared at him for a long moment. Then he pulled out his radio. This is Miller. False alarm at the Obsidian. Workplace dispute already resolved, heading back to the station. The younger officer looked confused. But sir, I said it's resolved, Chapman. Miller's tone left no room for argument. After the police left, after Paul was escorted out by his humiliated security team, after the witnesses were finally allowed to leave through the now unlocked door, several of them leaving cash on the tables as if paying for the show, the restaurant fell silent. It was just me and Sung-min. He locked the door again, but gently this time. Then he walked to the bar, pulled out a first aid kit, and gestured for me to sit. I climbed onto a bar stool, wincing as the movement pulled at my burned skin. Sung-min opened the kit and pulled out burn cream, gauze, and medical tape. His hands, which had moved with such violence an hour ago, were impossibly gentle now. He applied the cream with careful, precise movements, his fingers barely touching my skin. In Korea, he said quietly, there's a traditional medicine practice called hanbang. Natural remedies passed down through generations. My grandmother used to make a salve from honeysuckle and mugwort for burns. She said burns weren't just physical wounds, they were spiritual ones. They marked moments when the world showed you its cruelty, and the only way to heal was to remember that for every person who burns you, there's someone willing to treat the wound. I watched him work, this dangerous man with gentle hands. Why did you really lock the door? I asked. He was quiet for a moment. Because I've spent 5 years watching you, he admitted. Not in a creepy way, just watching. The way you smile at difficult customers, the way you never complain even when the kitchen messes up your orders, the way you stay late to help the dishwasher when he's behind. You're good, Vanita, genuinely good. And the world has too few good people for me to let someone hurt you without consequences. He finished bandaging my arm and started to step back, but I caught his hand. The woman, I said, gesturing to the tattoo over his heart, the sad, beautiful face I'd seen in the freezer. Who was she? My wife, he said. She died 6 years ago. Cancer. I couldn't protect her from that, couldn't fight it, couldn't threaten it, couldn't make it go away. All my power, all my connections, all my violence, none of it mattered. She died anyway. His eyes met mine. You remind me of her, not in looks, in spirit, in the way you see people, and when he hurt you, something in me broke, or maybe it woke up. I'm not sure which is worse. He reached for his jacket and draped it over my shoulders, covering my stained uniform. The fabric smelled like cedar and something else, something warm and safe. You don't wear this apron anymore, he said quietly. You don't serve people who don't see you. You run this place with me, as my partner. Equal share, equal say. Or if you want to leave, if this was too much, if I scared you, I'll give you 6 months' salary and the best reference you've ever seen. Your choice. I looked around the empty restaurant, at the locked door, at the tables still set with half-finished meals, at the coffee stain on the marble floor that would probably never fully come out. I thought about Paul on his knees, about Sung-min's tattoos, about the cleaver in the freezer and the choice I'd made to stop him, about power and protection and the thin line between them. I'll stay, I said. But we're getting security cameras that actually work. And you're teaching me Korean, and if anyone ever tries this again, we call the police first. Then you can lock the door. For the first time all night, Sung-min smiled. A real smile, small and sad and hopeful all at once. Deal. Tonight you learned something most people never realize. The concept of jong, that deep Korean emotional connection built through time and silent protection. You learned about kamyeon, the face or honor that matters more than money in many Asian cultures. You learned that the kakangpai operated under hierarchical systems where debts, especially debts of dignity, must be repaid. You learned that workplace assault involving burns gives victims rights beyond just workers' compensation. They can pursue both criminal and civil action. And maybe most importantly, you learned that power without restraint destroys the person wielding it, but power used to protect the vulnerable can save 2 people at once, the victim and the protector. Violence has a price, but so does silence, and so does standing up. If this story made you think differently about the people who serve you, about the power dynamics in every interaction, about who deserves protection and who provides it, hit that like button. Subscribe, because stories like this need to be told. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been Vanita, Paul, or one of the 50 silent witnesses? What did you do? What do you wish you'd done? Your answer matters, because the next time you see someone being hurt, you get to choose who you'll be.